I walked into my childhood home on my 25th birthday to find a half-eaten chocolate cake from the fridge, with a handwritten note reading, "Sorry, money's tight." This was exactly 3 months after my brother Tyler's massive backyard concert celebration, with college friends flown in, and a brand new Ford Mustang. When I stayed quiet, processing the stark difference, my mother laughed dismissively and said, "Why are you always so dramatic?" I silently packed my bag, snapped a photo of my pathetic celebration, and walked out the front door. The drive to my cramped studio apartment felt like traveling through a time machine of disappointment. Every red light gave me another moment to process what had just happened, and every moment brought back another memory that suddenly made perfect sense. I pulled into my parking spot behind the old brick building where I rented my 400-square-foot space and sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, staring at the photo I had taken. There it was. Half a chocolate cake store bought from the clearance section with "Happy Birthday, Jason," scrawled in blue frosting that looked like it had been written by a 5-year-old. Next to it, a crumpled piece of notebook paper with my mother's handwriting. "Sorry, money's tight. Love, Mom and Dad." No card, no wrapped gift, no family gathering. Just a leftover dessert and an excuse. I scrolled through my phone to Tyler's Instagram from 3 months ago. The contrast was so brutal, it felt like comparing a Hollywood premiere to a gas station bathroom. Tyler's 25th birthday had been a 3-day extravaganza that started with a surprise backyard concert featuring his college band and 2 professional musicians they flew in from Nashville. The posts showed a custom-built stage professional sound equipment, catering from the best BBQ joint in town, and at least 60 people celebrating. The final post showed Tyler standing next to a gleaming red Ford Mustang with a giant bow on the hood. The caption read, "Best parents in the world can't believe they saved up for this dream car. Love you, Mom and Dad." 437 likes, 52 comments, all praising our parents for being so generous and thoughtful. I remembered that weekend clearly now. I had called to ask if they wanted to grab dinner since I was feeling lonely after a rough week at my dead-end retail job. My mother told me they were too busy with family obligations to spend time with me. I spent that Saturday night eating microwaved pizza and watching Netflix alone, having no idea that my entire extended family was 2 miles away celebrating my brother like he had just won an Olympic medal. The memories started flooding back, each one hitting harder than the last. Tyler's high school graduation party had been held at the country club with a DJ professional photographer and dinner for 80 people. Mine had been a dinner at Applebee's, with just my parents, where they spent most of the meal talking about Tyler's upcoming college plans. Tyler's college tuition had been paid in full all 4 years at a prestigious private university. I worked 3 jobs during high school to save money, took out student loans that I was still paying off, and attended community college for 2 years before transferring to a state school. When I asked my parents for help with books or housing, they explained that they had already stretched their budget helping Tyler and couldn't afford to assist me the same way. Tyler's wedding 2 years ago had been a fairy tale event at an upscale venue with 200 guests. Our parents paid for the entire reception, the flowers, the photography, and even the honeymoon. When I got married 6 months later, they gave me a $50 gift card to Target and said they hoped I understood that they couldn't afford to contribute after Tyler's big event. I called my best friend Marcus, needing to talk to someone who might help me make sense of this insanity. "Jason, man, I was wondering when you'd finally see it," Marcus said when I explained what had happened. "I've been watching this pattern for years, but I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding like I was stirring up family drama. What do you mean you've been watching it? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Remember when I ran into your dad at Home Depot last month? He spent 20 minutes bragging about Tyler's birthday party. He told me exactly how much they spent on everything. The concert alone cost $15,000. The car was another $18,000. He said they took out a second mortgage to pay for it all, but it was worth it because Tyler deserved the best. My stomach dropped. A second mortgage? Yeah, and he was proud about it, Jason. He kept saying how Tyler had always been their investment in the future, and that successful kids require successful celebrations. When I asked how you were doing, he just shrugged and said, "You were fine, that you didn't need the same kind of support because you weren't as ambitious." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. Not only had they lied about money being tight, but they had literally borrowed against their home to fund Tyler's celebration while giving me leftover cake and a handwritten apology. There's more, Marcus continued hesitantly. I didn't want to tell you this, but after talking to your dad, I checked Tyler's social media more carefully. He posted stories throughout that weekend showing all the receipts and costs. He was bragging about the expense like it was a competition or something. I hung up and immediately went to Tyler's Instagram stories from that weekend, checking the archived highlights he had saved under Best Birthday Ever. There, they were screenshots of invoices and receipts he had posted with laughing emojis. The band, $12,000 plus travel expenses. The catering, $4,000. The decorations and sound equipment rental, $3,000. The car, $18,500 financed through their bank. The total came to over $37,000 for a single birthday celebration, while they gave me a half-eaten cake and claimed poverty. I sat in my car for 2 hours, scrolling through years of social media posts, family photos, and text message conversations, seeing everything through this new lens. In every family photo, Tyler was positioned center stage while I was relegated to the edges. In every family group text, Tyler's achievements were celebrated with paragraphs of praise, while my accomplishments received brief, polite acknowledgments. The pattern wasn't new. It wasn't even subtle. I had just been too close to see it clearly. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Are you coming back?" I stared at the message for 10 minutes before typing my response. Why would I come back for leftover cake when you can afford $37,000 parties for Tyler? 3 dots appeared and disappeared for several minutes before he finally replied, "We'll talk about this later," but I knew we wouldn't talk about it. We never talked about anything that mattered. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the neighborhood where I grew up. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who might have them. Mrs. Patterson had lived next door to my family for 35 years, and had always been the type of neighbor who knew everyone's business without being malicious about it. If anyone could shed light on my parents' actual financial situation, it would be her. I found her in her front garden, tending to the rose bushes that separated her property from my childhood home. She looked up with genuine surprise and delight when she saw me walking across the lawn. "Jason, how wonderful to see you, honey. I heard it was your birthday yesterday. How did you celebrate?" The innocence of her question nearly broke my heart. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you. I'm trying to understand some things about my family's financial situation." She gestured for me to sit with her on the porch swing, where I had spent countless afternoons as a child, listening to her stories about the neighborhood's history. "Your parents have been doing so well lately," she said, settling beside me. "Your father was just telling Mr. Henderson about their new boat last week. A beautiful 28-footer, he said. They're planning to take it out on the lake every weekend this summer. I felt my chest tighten. A boat. Oh, yes, and they're so excited about their European cruise in the fall. Your mother showed me the brochure. 3 weeks through Italy, France, and Spain. She said they've been saving for years to take a trip like that, and now that both boys are grown and settled, they finally feel free to spend money on themselves. Each word felt like a small explosion in my brain. A boat. A European cruise. While they gave me leftover cake and a note about money being tight. Mrs. Patterson, did my dad mention anything about financial struggles recently? Any concerns about money or having to cut back on expenses? She looked genuinely confused. Financial struggles? Oh no, dear, just the opposite. He told several neighbors about his construction business having the best year ever. Something about landing 3 major commercial contracts and finally feeling comfortable about retirement. In fact, he was bragging about having enough saved up that they could afford to be generous with family celebrations. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, each revelation more devastating than the last. Mrs. Patterson mentioned my father's new truck, my mother's recent kitchen renovation, and their plans to help Tyler buy his first house with a substantial down payment gift. After leaving Mrs. Patterson's house, I spent the afternoon researching my parents' financial footprint through public records and social media investigation. Property records showed they owned 3 rental properties in addition to their primary residence. My father's construction company had expanded to 12 employees and maintained an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. My mother's recent Facebook posts showed expensive dinners, shopping trips, and entertainment that hardly suggested financial hardship. But the most damaging evidence came from a social media discovery that evening. While scrolling through my mother's Facebook friends list, I noticed she was connected to my great-aunt Helen, who had died 2 years ago. Curious, I clicked on the connection and found condolence posts from that time period. In the comments, my mother had written, "Thank you all for your kind words. Helen was generous to our family even in death, leaving us a substantial inheritance that will help secure our future." A substantial inheritance. 2 years ago. Around the time Tyler's wedding expenses were paid, and their spending habits dramatically increased. I called my cousin David, Aunt Helen's son, whom I hadn't spoken to in over 3 years. "Jason," he said, surprised to hear from me. "How are you doing, man?" "David, I need to ask you about Aunt Helen's will. My parents mentioned receiving an inheritance, but I never heard any details." There was a pause. "You don't know. Know what? Jason, Aunt Helen left money to your family, but she specifically requested it be used to help both her great-nephews equally. She left instructions that the inheritance should support both you and Tyler during major life transitions. Your parents were named as trustees to distribute it fairly between both of you." My hands started shaking. "How much money are we talking about?" The total inheritance was $120,000 with specific instructions that it should be split equally for things like weddings, home purchases, career transitions, or other significant life events. She wanted to make sure both of you had equal opportunities. I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. "David, my parents never told me about this inheritance, and they've never given me any money from it." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute. "Jason," David finally said, his voice carefully controlled, "your parents told our entire family that they had used portions of the inheritance for both your wedding and Tyler's. They said you were both equally supported, and that Aunt Helen's wishes were being honored exactly as she requested." After hanging up, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall for 2 hours. Not only had my parents stolen money that was legally and morally mine, but they had lied to our entire extended family about it. They had taken $60,000 that belonged to me and used it to fund Tyler's extravagant lifestyle while telling everyone they were treating us equally. I called my parents' house and my father answered on the second ring. "Dad, I know about Aunt Helen's inheritance." The silence was deafening. "I know she left money specifically for both Tyler and me. I know you've been using my portion to pay for Tyler's celebrations. And I know you lied to the whole family about it." "Jason, you're misunderstanding the situation." "Am I? Then explain it to me." "Explain how Tyler gets a $37,000 birthday party funded with inheritance money that was meant to be split equally, while I get leftover cake and a note about financial hardship." Another long pause. "Your mother and I made decisions we felt were in the best interest of the family. My portion of that inheritance money paid for Tyler's car, didn't it? And his wedding reception. And probably the boat and the cruise too." "Jason, this conversation is inappropriate for the phone. If you want to discuss family finances, you can come home and we'll talk like adults." No, Dad. We'll discuss this through lawyers if we have to. But I'm done pretending this is normal family behavior." I hung up before he could respond. 30 minutes later, Tyler called. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he said without preamble. "Why are you attacking Mom and Dad over money? They've been generous to both of us our whole lives." "Tyler, did you know about Aunt Helen's inheritance?" "Of course I knew about it. Mom and Dad used it to help with my wedding and some other expenses. They said they were helping you too." "They lied. They never gave me a single dollar from that inheritance. Every penny of my portion went to funding your lifestyle." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Look, Jason, I don't know all the details about how they managed the money, but I'm sure they had good reasons for their decisions. You can't just call them up screaming about finances. It makes you look unstable. Unstable. Tyler, they stole $60,000 from me. They took out a second mortgage to fund your birthday party while giving me leftover cake. And you think I'm the problem here. You're being dramatic, just like Mom said. They've supported both of us plenty over the years. Maybe instead of complaining about what you didn't get, you should be grateful for what you did receive." What exactly did I receive, Tyler? Tell me one thing they've given me that compares to what you've gotten. He couldn't answer. After another minute of silence, he hung up. I spent that night awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the financial theft was just the tip of the iceberg. This wasn't about money. This was about 28 years of systematic favoritism manipulation and emotional abuse disguised as normal family dynamics. The next morning, I called the law office that had handled Aunt Helen's estate. I explained my situation to the receptionist, who transferred me to the attorney who had managed the will. Mr. William Chandler had been practicing estate law for 43 years and had known my great-aunt personally. "Mr. Chandler, I'm calling about my great-aunt Helen Morrison's estate. I believe there may have been some mishandling of the inheritance funds." "Jason Morrison," he said slowly. "Yes, I remember you from the funeral. Your aunt spoke about you often. She was very concerned about ensuring both you and your brother received equal treatment from her estate. Sir, I need to ask you directly what were the specific terms of her will regarding the inheritance money." Mr. Chandler paused, and I could hear papers shuffling. "Jason, I assumed you were aware of the trust structure. Your great-aunt left specific instructions that the $120,000 be placed in a trust, managed by your parents as trustees with explicit directions that the funds be distributed equally between you and Tyler for major life milestones. Weddings, home purchases, career investments, education expenses, or other significant life events. Mr. Chandler, my parents never told me about any of this. I've never received a single dollar from that inheritance. The silence on the other end was heavy with implications. Jason, that's extremely concerning. Your parents signed documentation acknowledging their fiduciary responsibility as trustees. They've been receiving detailed annual statements showing the trust balance and any distributions made. According to my records, significant distributions have been made over the past 2 years. What kind of distributions? More paper shuffling. Let me see. There were 2 large distributions in 2023. One for $18,400 listed as Tyler Morrison wedding expenses, and another for $15,600 listed as Jason Morrison wedding expenses. Then, last year, there were several distributions $22,000 for Tyler Morrison career investment, $37,000 for Tyler Morrison birthday celebration, and $12,000 for Jason Morrison career transition support. My head was spinning. Mr. Chandler, I never received any money for my wedding or for career transition. My parents gave me a $50 Target gift card for my wedding, and I've never received any career support from them. Jason, that would constitute trustee fraud. If they distributed money claiming it was for your benefit, but never actually gave it to you, that's a serious legal violation. We scheduled a meeting for the following day. Mr. Chandler explained that if my parents had been falsifying distribution records, they could be held liable for the full amount stolen plus damages and legal fees. That evening, I received a text from my mother. Your father told me about your phone call yesterday. I think you're confused about some things. Why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow and we can clear this up? I responded. I'll be meeting with Aunt Helen's estate attorney tomorrow instead. We can clear things up through legal channels. She called immediately. Jason, honey, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Yes, we received some money from Aunt Helen, and yes, we used it to help the family. But we've always tried to be fair to both of you boys. Mom, the lawyer, has records showing you claimed to distribute over $27,000 to me that I never received. That's not being fair. That's fraud. Sweetheart, we spent that money on things that benefited you. Your wedding reception, remember, we paid for the venue. Mom, I paid for my own wedding venue. You gave me a $50 gift card. I have receipts. Another pause. Well, there were other expenses. Things you might not remember or realize we covered. Like what? Your car repairs last year, your dental work, Christmas gifts. We've supported you in ways you don't even recognize. Mom, I paid for my own car repairs and dental work. And Christmas gifts don't count as inheritance distribution. You've been stealing money that legally belongs to me. Jason Morrison, I will not be accused of stealing from my own son. We've been generous to you your entire life. Then prove it. Show me the receipts for the $27,000 you claim to have spent on me. She hung up. 2 hours later, Tyler called again. Jason, you need to stop this. Mom is crying, Dad is furious, and you're tearing the family apart over money. Tyler, they've been committing fraud for 2 years. This isn't about family drama. This is about criminal activity. Criminal activity. Come on, man. These are our parents. They raised us, fed us, clothed us, put roofs over our heads. So, what if they spent inheritance money differently than some legal document said they should? They're family, not business partners. Tyler, let me ask you something. How much inheritance money did you actually receive directly? What do you mean? I mean cash in your hand, or payments made directly to your accounts. How much of that $120,000 did you personally receive? Tyler was quiet for a long moment. They paid for my wedding reception and some other things. They didn't hand me cash, but they used the money for my benefit. How much? I don't know the exact amount. Maybe 30 or 40,000 total over 2 years. Tyler, according to the trust records, they distributed $85,000, claiming it was for your benefit, and $27,000 claiming it was for mine. If you only received 30 or 40,000, and I received nothing, where did the other $65,000 go? For the first time, Tyler sounded uncertain. I assumed they were managing it responsibly. Tyler, they took out a second mortgage to pay for your birthday party because they'd already spent all the inheritance money. Your $37,000 celebration was funded by debt, not by Aunt Helen's gift. The call ended with Tyler hanging up without another word. I spent that night researching trustee fraud and inheritance theft. What I learned made me physically sick. My parents hadn't just stolen from me. They had potentially committed federal crimes. Falsifying trust distribution records was a felony. Using inheritance funds for personal expenses while lying about beneficiary distributions could result in criminal charges and significant jail time. But more than the legal implications, I was beginning to understand that this level of deception required years of planning and coordination. This wasn't a simple mistake or misunderstanding. This was systematic, deliberate, and calculated. My parents had been lying to lawyers' family members and their own children for over 2 years, maintaining detailed false records and manipulating trust documents. The morning of my meeting with Mr. Chandler, I received an email from my father with the subject line, "Family Meeting Request." The email read, "Jason, your mother and I would like to meet with you before you do anything rash with lawyers. We can explain everything and work this out as a family. Please don't involve outsiders in private family matters. We love you and want to resolve this together." I didn't respond. Some things were too broken to fix with family meetings and explanations. Mr. Chandler's office was located in a restored Victorian house downtown, with dark wood paneling and law books that looked like they had been collecting wisdom for decades. When I arrived for our meeting, he had already prepared a comprehensive analysis of the trust documents and distribution records. "Jason, I've reviewed everything carefully, and I'm afraid the situation is worse than we initially discussed," he said, sliding a thick folder across his mahogany desk. "Your parents haven't just misappropriated trust funds. They've been systematically falsifying distribution records for over 2 years. The folder contained photocopies of forged receipts, fake invoices for services never rendered, and fabricated documentation claiming money had been spent on my behalf. There was a receipt for wedding expenses that listed a venue I had never seen, invoices for career counseling services I had never received, and documentation for educational expenses that had never occurred. The total amount misappropriated is approximately $68,000. Mr. Chandler continued. This includes your legitimate share plus accumulated interest. However, there's another issue we need to discuss. He pulled out a separate set of documents. Your great-aunt included specific instructions in her will that if either beneficiary felt they were being treated unfairly by the trustees, I was authorized to conduct an investigation. During that investigation, I'm required to examine all aspects of the trustees' relationship with the beneficiaries. What does that mean? It means I need to look at whether your parents' financial mismanagement extended beyond the inheritance. Were there other areas where their treatment of you versus your brother showed systematic bias or potentially harmful favoritism, I spent the next hour detailing the pattern of differential treatment I had experienced from educational support to celebration funding to general family dynamics. Mr. Chandler took detailed notes and asked specific questions about financial support, career guidance, and family business opportunities. Jason, has your father ever offered you employment opportunities with his construction company? Never. He's always claimed there were no suitable positions available, but I'm qualified for project management or estimating roles. Mr. Chandler made another note. Has anyone ever mentioned your father discussing your qualifications with potential employers in your area? The question seemed oddly specific. Not that I know of. Why do you ask? Part of my investigation involves ensuring that trustees haven't used their position to harm beneficiaries in ways beyond direct financial theft. Sometimes, parents who show extreme favoritism also engage in what we call career interference to maintain the family dynamics they prefer. After leaving Mr. Chandler's office, I couldn't stop thinking about his question regarding career interference. I had applied for dozens of jobs over the past 3 years, many of which seemed perfect fits for my qualifications. Yet, I had been consistently rejected often without clear explanations. I decided to call Marcus and ask him to investigate something for me. Marcus, you know people all over town through your sales job. Would you be willing to make some discreet inquiries about my job applications? I'm starting to wonder if there's something I don't know about my reputation in the local job market. Actually, Jason, I've been wondering about that myself. You're one of the most competent people I know, but you've had terrible luck with employment opportunities. Let me make some calls. 2 days later, Marcus called me with information that made my blood run cold. Jason, you need to sit down for this. I talked to 3 different hiring managers at companies where you applied over the past 2 years. All 3 told me the same story. What story? They said they received phone calls from someone claiming to be a family friend, warning them about your character. The caller identified himself as someone who had known you since childhood and felt obligated to share concerns about your reliability, anger issues, and family problems. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? The caller told them you had a history of not showing up for work, that you had anger management problems, and that you came from a dysfunctional family situation that made you unstable. He suggested that while your resume looked good on paper hiring, you would be a risk they should avoid. Did anyone recognize the voice or get a name? 2 of the managers said the caller identified himself as a local business owner who had worked with your family. Jason, I think it was your father. The room started spinning. My father has been sabotaging my job applications. It gets worse. I also talked to Sarah Wellington at Mountain View Construction. She said they were actually planning to offer you the project manager position last year, but after receiving that warning call, they decided to go with an internal candidate instead. I hung up and immediately called the HR director at Mountain View Construction. Sarah Wellington agreed to meet with me that afternoon to discuss what had happened during my application process. Jason. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but the phone call we received about you was very concerning. Sarah explained when we met at a coffee shop downtown. The caller said he was a family friend who felt morally obligated to warn us that you had serious personal problems. What specific problems did he mention? He said you had been fired from previous jobs for attendance issues, that you had anger problems that made you difficult to work with, and that you were involved in family financial disputes that suggested poor judgment and instability. He recommended we look for other candidates. Sarah pulled out a notebook from our conversation. I actually wrote down some of his exact words because they were so specific. He said, "Jason is a good kid with potential, but he's got anger issues that come from growing up in a complicated family situation. I'd hate to see you hire him and then deal with the problems that come with his personality." He also said you had been borrowing money from family members and causing drama over financial disagreements. Each word felt like a physical blow. My own father had been systematically destroying my career prospects while maintaining the facade that I was simply unsuccessful on my own merits. "Sarah, I need you to know that everything he told you was a lie. I've never been fired from any job. I don't have anger management problems. And the family financial disputes he mentioned are about my parents stealing my inheritance money." Sarah looked genuinely disturbed. "Jason, if someone has been making false statements to prevent you from getting employment, that's a serious legal issue. You might want to consider consulting with an attorney about defamation and interference with business relationships. I spent that evening calling other companies where I had applied and been rejected. 3 more hiring managers confirmed receiving similar warning calls about my character and reliability. In each case, the caller had identified himself as a local business owner who knew my family and felt obligated to share concerns about my suitability as an employee. The pattern was clear and devastating. My father had been using his reputation as a successful business owner to systematically sabotage my career opportunities. Every rejection, every missed opportunity, every closed door had been the result of his deliberate interference. But there was one more revelation that nearly broke me completely. I called Jenny Morrison, the HR director at Pinnacle Engineering, where I had applied for what seemed like my dream job 8 months ago. The position was perfect for my qualifications. The salary was excellent, and I had felt confident about my chances after a successful phone interview. "Jason, I remember you well," Jenny said. "You were actually our top candidate for that position. We were planning to make you an offer. What happened? We received a call from someone who said he was your previous supervisor. He told us you had been terminated for threatening behavior toward coworkers and that you had made concerning comments about workplace violence. After hearing that, we couldn't risk bringing you into our organization." The room went silent around me. My father hadn't just undermined my applications with vague character assassination. He had made specific damaging accusations that could have destroyed my reputation permanently. "Jenny, I've never been terminated from any job, and I've never made threats or comments about workplace violence. Someone has been deliberately sabotaging my career with false accusations. Jason, if that's true, you need to document everything and consider legal action. False statements that prevent someone from getting employment are a serious matter." After hanging up, I sat in my apartment trying to process the full scope of what had been done to me. The inheritance theft was criminal, but the career sabotage was personal destruction on a level I hadn't imagined possible. My father had spent years systematically destroying my reputation, my opportunities, and my future, while maintaining the pretense of being a loving parent who just couldn't afford to help me financially. The next morning, Tyler called. "Jason, Dad told me you've been calling around town spreading lies about our family. He said you're trying to damage his business reputation because you're angry about some money disagreements." Tyler, Dad, has been sabotaging my job applications for years. He's been calling potential employers and lying about my character to make sure I can't get decent work. That's insane. Why would Dad do something like that? Because if I'm successful and independent, it threatens the family dynamic where you're the golden child, and I'm the failure who needs to be grateful for scraps. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Jason, even if that were true, which I doubt. Why would it matter to Dad whether you succeed or not? Think about it, Tyler. If I get a good job and start doing well financially, I might stop accepting the family narrative that I'm less capable than you. I might start asking uncomfortable questions about why I've always been treated differently. Dad's business and social reputation depend on maintaining the story that he's a good father who treats his children fairly. You're paranoid, Jason. Dad wouldn't sabotage his own son. Tyler. I have documentation. I've talked to multiple hiring managers who received warning calls about me. The pattern is clear and extensive, but Tyler had already hung up. I realized then that my brother was either willfully blind to the truth or actively complicit in maintaining the family dynamic that benefited him. Either way, I was completely alone in a fight against people who had been systematically destroying my life for years, while convincing everyone, including me, that my failures were my own fault. The next week, Mr. Chandler requested a meeting to discuss new information that had emerged during his investigation. When I arrived at his office, I found him reviewing a thick file with several other documents spread across his desk. Jason, I've made some calls to colleagues in the legal community about your situation, and I've discovered something that changes everything, he began. Your case isn't unique. There's a pattern of trustee fraud cases involving families where one child is systematically favored over others, often accompanied by career interference and financial manipulation. He handed me a business card. I'd like you to meet with David Morrison, who contacted me after hearing about your case through family connections. He's your cousin, I believe. I stared at the card. David Morrison was indeed my cousin, my father's nephew, but I hadn't spoken to him in over 5 years. There had been some kind of family falling out when David was about 25, and suddenly he had stopped coming to family gatherings. My parents had always described it vaguely as David, making poor life choices, and burning bridges with people who loved him. I called David that evening. Jason? He said, his voice carrying a mixture of surprise and recognition. I heard through the legal community that you're dealing with some family financial issues. I've been wondering when you'd figure out what kind of people our parents really are. What do you mean, our parents, David? I thought you just had problems with your own parents. David laughed bitterly. Jason, your parents were the orchestrators of my family destruction. Your father convinced my parents to cut me off financially and emotionally because I was supposedly a bad influence on you and Tyler. I don't understand. Meet me tomorrow. There are some people you need to talk to and some documents you need to see. You're not the first family member who's been systematically destroyed by your parents, and you won't be the last unless someone stops them. The next day, David and I met at a small restaurant outside town. He had brought a folder thick with documents and what appeared to be legal correspondence. Jason, 5 years ago, I discovered that your parents had been intercepting Christmas and birthday money that my grandmother had been sending to me through them. When I confronted your father about it, he told my parents that I was accusing family members of theft, and that I had become unstable and financially irresponsible. David pulled out bank statements and canceled checks. My grandmother had been sending me $500 every Christmas and every birthday since I turned 18. Your parents volunteered to deliver the money since they saw her more often. I never received a single dollar over 7 years. That's $7,000 they stole from me. But that's not the worst part, David continued. When I tried to resolve it directly with my grandmother, your father told my parents that I was harassing an elderly woman for money, and that my behavior was becoming dangerous. My own parents cut off contact with me based on your father's lies. I felt sick. David, I had no idea any of this happened. Of course you didn't. just like you had no idea about your own inheritance money being stolen. Your parents are experts at isolating their victims and controlling the narrative. David introduced me to Sarah Morrison, my father's sister, whom I hadn't seen in over 3 years. Sarah explained that she had also been gradually excluded from family gatherings after questioning some of my parents' financial decisions and treatment of different family members. Now, Jason, I tried to give you money for your wedding directly, but your mother told me you had specifically requested that gifts go through them because you were embarrassed about accepting help from relatives, Sarah explained. I sent a check for $2,000 to your parents to give to you. I never received it. I also sent you birthday and Christmas gifts for several years, including a check for $500 for your 24th birthday. Your mother always thanked me on your behalf and said you were grateful but too busy to write thank you notes. The pattern was becoming clear and devastating. My parents had been systematically intercepting gifts money and communications from extended family members, then using those interceptions to isolate both me and the relatives who wanted to support me. How many other family members have experienced this? I asked. David and Sarah exchanged glances. Jason, your parents have systematically alienated or manipulated nearly every family member who has ever questioned their treatment of you versus Tyler, or who has tried to support you independently. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a group text conversation between several family members that I had never seen. This is a family group chat that includes your aunts, uncles, and cousins from both sides of the family. Everyone except you, Tyler, and your parents. We started it 3 years ago after realizing that multiple family members were experiencing similar problems with your parents' manipulation and deception. I scrolled through months of messages detailing a systematic pattern of financial theft, emotional manipulation, and family destruction orchestrated by my parents. Relatives had been sending money gifts and support intended for me that had been intercepted and stolen. Others had been told lies about my behavior character, or requests that had prevented them from maintaining relationships with me. Your cousin Michelle sent you a graduation gift of $300 when you finished college. Your parents told her you said the money wasn't enough, and you expected more from successful relatives. Your Uncle Robert offered you a job at his consulting firm 2 years ago. Your father told him you had declined because you thought the work was beneath you and that you were holding out for better offers. Your Aunt Jessica tried to invite you to her daughter's wedding last year. Your mother told her you said weddings were a waste of money and you didn't want to attend family celebrations. Each revelation felt like discovering that my entire life had been built on lies. My isolation from extended family wasn't the result of my own social failures or lack of interest in maintaining relationships. It was the deliberate result of a systematic campaign by my parents to control my access to support opportunities and genuine human connections. Jason. David said, there are currently 8 family members who have been alienated, manipulated, or financially harmed by your parents over the past decade. All of us have been told different lies about each other to prevent us from comparing stories and realizing the scope of their behavior. Sarah pulled out another folder. We've been documenting everything for 2 years, hoping that eventually someone would be in a position to take legal action. We have bank records copies of intercepted correspondence documentation of lies told to employers and evidence of systematic financial theft from multiple family members. Why didn't anyone tell me this was happening? We tried, Sarah said quietly. But every attempt to reach out to you was blocked or sabotaged. Your parents told us you were too stressed about your own problems to deal with family drama that you had asked not to be contacted about financial disputes, and that involving you would only make your life more difficult. David leaned forward. Jason, your parents have been the center of a web of manipulation and deception that has destroyed relationships, stolen money, and damaged lives for over a decade. You're not just dealing with inheritance theft and career sabotage. You're dealing with systematic psychological abuse designed to maintain their control over family dynamics. What can we do about it? Together, we have enough evidence to pursue serious legal action. Individually, we were just isolated family members making claims that seemed like personal disputes. But collectively, we can demonstrate a pattern of criminal behavior that spans years and multiple victims. Sarah handed me a business card for a law firm that specialized in family fraud cases. We've already consulted with them. If you're willing to join our case, we can pursue charges for inheritance fraud defamation, intentional interference with business relationships, and systematic family financial abuse. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone in fighting an impossible battle. I had allies, evidence, and a path forward that could hold my parents accountable for years of destruction. But more importantly, I had finally found my real family, the relatives who had been trying to love and support me for years, while my parents systematically prevented those relationships from developing. The law firm of Henderson Martinez and Associates specialized in complex family fraud cases, and their initial consultation confirmed what David, Sarah, and I had suspected. We had enough evidence to pursue both civil and criminal charges against my parents. Attorney Rachel Martinez reviewed our documentation and described our case as one of the most comprehensive examples of systematic family financial abuse she had encountered. What we're looking at isn't just inheritance theft, she explained. It's a pattern of financial fraud, defamation, intentional interference with business relationships, and what could be classified as financial elder abuse regarding the intercepted money from your grandmother. She outlined a multi-pronged legal strategy that would simultaneously recover stolen funds, hold my parents accountable for career sabotage, and establish legal protection against future manipulation. We'll file a civil lawsuit to recover the inheritance funds plus interest and damages. We'll pursue criminal charges for trust fraud and elder financial abuse. And we'll seek restraining orders that prevent your parents from contacting your employers or interfering with your career opportunities. But Rachel also suggested a strategic approach that would maximize our chances of success while minimizing the ability of my parents to continue manipulating family narratives. Before we file official charges, I recommend we give your parents one opportunity to resolve this matter through full restitution and acknowledgement of wrongdoing. This approach often reveals the true character of the defendants and provides additional evidence if they refuse to take responsibility. I called my parents and requested a family meeting to discuss the inheritance issue and the career interference I had discovered. My father agreed to meet the following Sunday at their house, claiming they wanted to clear up any misunderstandings. I arrived with a folder containing documentation of the stolen inheritance money, evidence of career sabotage, and records of intercepted gifts from relatives. I also brought a small recording device which was legal in our state with single-party consent. My parents were seated at the kitchen table where I had eaten thousands of meals as a child. The familiar setting felt surreal, given the magnitude of what we were about to discuss. Dad, I know about the $68,000 you stole from my inheritance. I know about the phone calls you made to sabotage my job applications. And I know about the money and gifts you've intercepted from relatives over the years. My father's expression didn't change. Jason, you're making accusations based on misunderstandings and poor information. I have documentation, Dad. Bank records, trust distribution reports, and statements from multiple hiring managers who received your phone calls warning them not to hire me. My mother spoke for the first time. Honey, we've always done what we thought was best for both our boys. If there have been some financial misunderstandings, we can work those out as a family. Mom, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is systematic theft and sabotage spanning several years. I placed the inheritance documentation on the table. Here are the trust records showing you claimed to distribute $27,000 to me that I never received. Here are the forged receipts you submitted to the estate attorney. And here are statements from hiring managers documenting the false information you provided to prevent me from getting jobs. My father finally looked at the documents, then pushed them back across the table. Jason, your mother and I have spent our entire lives supporting you and your brother. We've made financial decisions that benefited the entire family, and we've given you guidance that we felt would help you make better life choices. Better life choices, Dad. You've been actively preventing me from getting good jobs while lying to lawyers about how my inheritance money was spent. Son, I've never prevented you from getting jobs. If employers choose not to hire you, that's based on their assessment of your qualifications and character. The complete denial of documented facts was breathtaking. Even confronted with evidence, my parents were maintaining the fiction that they had done nothing wrong. Dad, I have recordings of conversations with hiring managers who spoke to you directly. You told them I had anger problems, attendance issues, and that I had been fired from previous jobs for threatening behavior. All lies. My mother leaned forward. Jason, sometimes parents have to help potential employers understand situations that children might not represent accurately themselves. What situations, Mom? What have I ever done that would justify telling employers I'm violent or unreliable? Neither of them could provide an answer. I pulled out the documentation of intercepted gifts and family communications. What about the birthday money from Grandma Morrison that David never received? What about the wedding gift from Aunt Sarah that never reached me? What about Uncle Robert's job offer that you turned down on my behalf without asking me? My father stood up from the table. Jason, this conversation has become inappropriate. You're attacking your family based on rumors and lies from relatives who have their own problems with family relationships. Dad, will you return the money you stole from my inheritance? We didn't steal anything. We managed family finances responsibly. Will you admit to potential employers that the negative information you provided about me was false? We've never provided false information about anyone. Will you acknowledge that you've been intercepting gifts and communications intended for me? We've never intercepted anything that wasn't handled appropriately. The complete refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing, even when confronted with documented evidence, confirmed everything Rachel Martinez had told us about family fraud cases. The perpetrators typically maintained denial even when caught, often escalating their manipulation tactics when their control was threatened. I gathered the documents and stood up. Mom, Dad, I want you to understand something clearly. I know exactly what you've done. I have evidence of every crime you've committed, and I'm going to hold you accountable through legal channels. My mother started crying. Jason, please don't destroy our family over money. We love you, and we can work this out. You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me and sabotage my life while pretending to be loving parents. The money was just how you did it. I walked toward the door, then turned back. I'm giving you 72 hours to contact your attorney and discuss full restitution for the money you've stolen, public acknowledgement of the lies you've told about my character, and written agreements that you'll never interfere with my employment or relationships again. And if we refuse, my father asked, then you'll be facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and public exposure of everything you've done to multiple family members over the past decade. As I reached my car, Tyler pulled into the driveway. He walked toward the house without acknowledging me, then stopped and turned around. "Jason, I heard you're threatening to sue Mom and Dad." Tyler. "I'm holding them accountable for years of financial theft and deliberate sabotage of my life. They're our parents. Whatever problems you think exist, this isn't how you resolve family issues." Tyler, they stole $68,000 from me. They've been lying to potential employers to prevent me from getting good jobs. They've intercepted gifts and money from relatives for years. This isn't a family issue. This is criminal behavior. Tyler shook his head. "You've always been jealous of the support I've received, and now you're trying to destroy the family because you can't accept that Mom and Dad have different relationships with their children. Different relationships, Tyler. They committed crimes to maintain your advantages while systematically destroying my opportunities." "Whatever, Jason. But if you follow through with this legal threat, don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings anymore." Tyler. "I haven't been welcome at family gatherings for 28 years. I just finally figured out why." 3 days later, my parents' attorney contacted Rachel Martinez to discuss potential resolution of family financial disputes. The attorney made it clear that my parents denied any wrongdoing, but were willing to consider family assistance to help Jason with his financial challenges. Rachel's response was swift and definitive. Full restitution of $68,000 plus accumulated interest and damages, written acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and binding agreements to cease all interference with Mr. Morrison's employment and family relationships. Any lesser offer will result in immediate filing of criminal charges and civil lawsuits. That afternoon, I received a group text from Tyler to my parents and me. I talked to a family attorney about Jason's claims. He said the inheritance issue is complex and could be expensive to litigate. Maybe we should consider reaching a settlement that everyone can live with. For the first time, Tyler seemed to be acknowledging that my claims might have merit. But the damage was already irreversible. 28 years of systematic manipulation, theft, and sabotage couldn't be resolved with a settlement check and a promise to do better. I was moving forward with full legal action, not just to recover what was stolen from me, but to protect other family members from future abuse and ensure that my parents faced consequences for their years of deliberate cruelty. 6 months after that confrontation at my parents' kitchen table, I stood in the conference room of Henderson Martinez and Associates, reviewing the final settlement documents that would close the most difficult chapter of my life, while opening an entirely new one. The legal process had been swift and decisive. When faced with comprehensive evidence of inheritance fraud, career sabotage, and systematic family financial abuse, my parents' attorney had recommended immediate settlement rather than criminal prosecution. The final agreement required them to pay $79,000 in full restitution, including the original stolen inheritance amount, plus interest damages and legal fees. But the money was only part of the victory. The settlement included written acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, binding legal agreements, preventing future interference with my employment, and a requirement that they provide written corrections to the 3 companies where they had made false statements about my character. Perhaps, most importantly, the legal process had exposed the full scope of their manipulation to our extended family and community. When other relatives learned the details of what had been happening, the family dynamics shifted permanently. Tyler found himself increasingly isolated as family members began questioning how much he had known about our parents' behavior and whether he had been complicit in maintaining the systematic favoritism that had enabled the abuse. During the legal proceedings, I had also received unexpected support from my community. When word spread about the employment sabotage, several local business owners reached out to express their disgust with my father's behavior and to offer networking opportunities. The general contractor, who had received some of the most damaging false information about me, actually called to apologize and offer me a consulting contract, saying he had always regretted not hiring me based on what he now knew were lies. Using the recovered inheritance money, I started Morrison Project Consulting, specializing in construction project management and business development. Within 3 months, I had landed contracts with 4 major clients, including 2 who specifically sought me out after hearing about my situation through community networks. The business success wasn't just financially rewarding, it was personally validating. For 28 years, I had believed that my career struggles were the result of my own limitations, personality flaws, or lack of ambition. Discovering that my failures had been artificially created through deliberate sabotage was devastating. But building genuine success based on my actual abilities was profoundly healing. My relationships with extended family members also transformed completely. David, Sarah, and I had formed a genuine bond through our shared experience of surviving family manipulation. And we had become the foundation of a healthier family dynamic that valued honesty, mutual support, and authentic communication. Sarah had started hosting monthly family gatherings for the relatives who had been alienated by my parents' manipulation. These gatherings were smaller than the traditional family events I remembered from childhood, but they were filled with genuine affection, real conversation, and the kind of emotional safety I had never experienced in family settings. My 29th birthday was celebrated with this new family configuration, and the contrast with my 25th birthday could not have been more stark. Instead of leftover cake and a note about financial hardship, I received thoughtful gifts, heartfelt cards, and the presence of people who had chosen to love me without conditions or competition. But the most meaningful change was internal. The systematic gaslighting I had experienced for decades had convinced me that I was fundamentally less deserving of love, success, and respect than other people. Discovering that this belief had been artificially created and maintained through deliberate manipulation allowed me to begin reconstructing my sense of self-worth based on reality rather than manufactured inadequacy. I also began attending therapy to process the psychological impact of growing up in a family system designed to undermine my confidence and success. Dr. Patricia Williams specialized in family trauma and helped me understand that what I had experienced wasn't just unfair treatment or normal family favoritism, but a form of systematic emotional abuse designed to maintain an artificial hierarchy that benefited certain family members at my expense. Jason, what you're describing is called scapegoating, she explained during one of our sessions. In dysfunctional families, one child is often designated as the problem, while another is elevated to golden child status. The scapegoated child's failures are celebrated because they confirm the family narrative, while their successes are minimized or sabotaged because they threaten the established dynamic. Understanding the psychology behind what had happened helped me realize that my parents' behavior wasn't really about me as an individual. I had been assigned a role in their family system, and they had spent years ensuring I fulfilled that role regardless of my actual character abilities or potential. The most insidious aspect of scapegoating, Dr. Williams continued, is that the targeted child often internalizes the family's assessment of their worth. They begin to believe they truly are less capable, less deserving, or less valuable than their siblings. Recognizing how deeply I had internalized these false beliefs was painful, but it was also liberating. I began to see my past struggles and failures not as evidence of my inadequacy, but as the predictable result of systematic undermining by people who had a vested interest in maintaining my reduced status within the family system. My parents made several attempts to rebuild our relationship during the months following the settlement. They sent cards on holidays, left voicemail messages expressing their love and desire for reconciliation, and even showed up at my apartment once claiming they just wanted to talk. But I had learned to recognize the difference between genuine remorse and manipulative attempts to restore previous dynamics. Their communications consistently focused on their own pain and the damage to the family, rather than acknowledging the years of harm they had caused or demonstrating any real understanding of their behavior. Tyler also reached out periodically, usually when family events or holidays approached, and my absence became noticeable. His messages typically expressed confusion about why I was holding grudges, and suggested that I was being unreasonable in my expectations for accountability. I understand that Mom and Dad made some financial mistakes, he said in one voicemail, but they love both of us, and I think you're being too harsh about things that happened years ago. But Tyler's inability to acknowledge the systematic nature of what had occurred, or his own role in benefiting from and perpetuating the family dynamic that had harmed me, made genuine reconciliation impossible. He continued to view our parents' behavior as isolated mistakes, rather than components of a deliberate pattern designed to maintain his elevated status at my expense. I established clear boundaries. With all three of them, I would consider rebuilding relationships only after they completed family therapy, demonstrated genuine understanding of the harm they had caused, and showed consistent behavioral change over an extended period. None of them were willing to meet these requirements, which confirmed that their interest was in restoring the previous family dynamic, rather than creating healthier relationships based on mutual respect. As I prepared for my 30th birthday, I reflected on the journey that had brought me from that devastating 25th birthday celebration to a life built on authentic success and genuine relationships. The path had been difficult and painful, but it had led to a level of personal freedom and self-worth that would never have been possible while remaining trapped in a family system designed to diminish my potential. My business was thriving, with projects booked months in advance and a reputation for integrity that generated consistent referrals. I had built a network of professional relationships based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than manipulation and deception. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own perceptions and judgments rather than constantly second-guessing myself based on others' assessments. The years of gaslighting had trained me to doubt my own experiences and accept others' interpretations of reality even when they contradicted my direct observations. Recovering that trust in my own perspective had been essential to building genuine confidence and making sound decisions about relationships and opportunities. On the morning of my 30th birthday, I received a text message from Marcus. "Happy birthday, man. I'm proud of you for fighting for yourself and building the life you deserve." That afternoon, I opened Morrison Project Consulting's newest office, a small but professional space in downtown, where I could meet clients and manage my growing business. The office was modest, but it represented something that would have been impossible under my parents' systematic sabotage success, achieved through my own efforts and abilities. As I stood in my new office, looking at the professional certifications and client testimonials displayed on the walls, I thought about the life lesson that had emerged from this experience. The most important thing I had learned was that authentic relationships and genuine success require the courage to walk away from systems that diminish your potential, even when those systems involve people who claim to love you. Family relationships based on manipulation, favoritism, and conditional acceptance aren't actually family relationships at all. They are power structures designed to benefit certain members while controlling and limiting others. Breaking free from these structures is painful, but it creates a space for relationships built on genuine love, mutual respect, and authentic support. My real family now consisted of people who had chosen to love me without requiring me to play a diminished role to make them feel better about themselves. David, Sarah, Marcus, and the other genuine relationships in my life were based on who I actually was, not who others needed me to be, to maintain their own status or comfort. Standing in my office, I felt the deep satisfaction of knowing that everything I had achieved was built on honesty, hard work, and authentic relationships, rather than manipulation, theft, or artificial advantage. The success was genuinely mine, earned through my own efforts and supported by people who wanted to see me thrive. I thought about my parents and Tyler, who were continuing to navigate their relationships with each other while dealing with the consequences of their choices. The legal settlement had required them to face the reality of their behavior, but it couldn't force them to develop the self-awareness or emotional maturity needed to build healthier family dynamics. Tyler was discovering that being the golden child in a manipulative family system was its own form of limitation. Without the artificial contrast provided by my systematic diminishment, he was being evaluated on his own merits for the first time. The results were revealing the gap between his actual abilities and the elevated status he had enjoyed as a result of family favoritism. My parents were experiencing the social consequences of their manipulative behavior as other family members and community members learned about their actions. Their reputation for generosity and good parenting had been replaced by awareness of their capacity for deception and cruelty, fundamentally changing how others perceived and interacted with them. But I felt no satisfaction in their struggles. My goal had never been to hurt them, or to seek revenge for the years of harm they had caused. My goal had been to free myself from their control and build a life based on authenticity and genuine relationships. As the sun set on my 30th birthday, I realized that the painful journey I had traveled had led to exactly the life I had always wanted, but had never believed I deserved. I had professional success built on my own abilities, relationships based on genuine affection and mutual respect, and, most importantly, a clear understanding of my own worth that couldn't be undermined by others' manipulation or favoritism. The greatest gift I could offer to anyone facing similar family dynamics was the knowledge that walking away from toxic relationships, even family relationships, isn't giving up on love. It's making space for real love to enter your life while protecting yourself from people who use the language of love to justify harmful and controlling behavior. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining family relationships and protecting your own well-being? How do you distinguish between genuine family support and manipulative control disguised as love? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building authentic relationships. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the journey from family manipulation to genuine success. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you recognize your own worth and the courage you have to build the life you truly deserve.